Merry Christmas, one and all, or almost. We're almost there, just like we're almost at the end of our ranking and defining every single, or pretty much every single, board game mechanic or mechanism listed on Board Game Geek. We started at 150, we are down to our top 20. These are the top 20 best board game mechanics of all time. If you put them into your game, I personally will like it more, and then I will tell everybody to go buy it. So do it. Make me more games that are like these. I'm just kidding. There are a lot of really awesome board game mechanics. I think in my top 50, I'm always stoked to play them because I like games, right? And this one, you'll see maybe a little bit of a pattern that will reveal how much of a garbage person I really am on the inside. But you're stuck with me now. So let's get into the top 20. If you haven't checked out the list, go back and check it out and you'll hear the intro that I do on the previous list, and I'll save for doing on the top 10 because people only care about the top 10 and then won't go back. But this here is still the real deal of things that I really absolutely love in board games. Let's get right into it. Let's make this a quick video because I am sick. I've been sick for many weeks, and when I get better, well, I get sick again. But that's a me problem. Hopefully you're not sick of me, but I'm still gonna talk because I'm excited. I like to talk about these sorts of things. So here we go. Number 20, the 20th best board game mechanic of all time. You can go into Board Game Geek and look along if you want. This is the Bribery mechanic. And this can be part of the negotiation mechanic. You could throw it in there. I think they're two specific different instances because bribery specifically is, well, like the name suggests, I'll give you something to do what I want. I just love having this in a game. This was one of the things that really attracted me to Rising Sun, even though it does not happen. The implementation of this in Rising Sun is very minimal. There's very minimal bribery in Rising Sun, but it's what hooked me in there when I was reading through the rulebook. The concept that I can just give you a coin or give you a Ronin to do something I want, and that you can either decide to do it or not even after I've bribed you. I think that's so fun that you can manipulate other people into doing something that's more beneficial for you as long as you make it worth their while. And I love when games explicitly state this in the rulebook and explicitly build that into the part of the game, because I think it's important to mention bribery in a rulebook. I think most games you could have bribery in, like, hey, you do this action, I'll do this action, right? That's just part of table talk. That's part of the flow of some games. A lot of area control games too, right? Where you can say, hey, you attack them, I'll attack them. Even coup has that. Hey, I'll coup that person if you coup that person, and we can work together. But that's not bribery, that's just negotiation. Bribery specifically allows you to make like legally binding contracts between the players that the players can be creative about. And that's what I really enjoy, is that it encourages that creativity, it encourages that thinking outside the box, it encourages the game to go on longer as you haggle over what the bribe's going to be and why it should be 2 coins and not 1 coin. And I revel in that sort of stuff. I love it immensely. I always have so much fun bribing and getting bribed and turning down the bribes, because if you're bribing me, you desperately need this thing and I'm gonna make you pay through the nose for it, like you should with me. The number 1 thing listed here is Dune, and then it goes all the way down to 339 on Board Game Geek with The King's Dilemma. Spartacus is there. Sheriff of Nottingham is listed there. The Republic of Rome, Santiago. Only 91 games have bribery actually baked into their rulebooks. And Rising Sun should be listed here because it does have this as a mechanic, but it is not a central mechanic. You never really end up bribing somebody in Rising Sun because the coins are too valuable, but I like that it's in there. Now, the number 19 best board game mechanic of all time, because it's my favorite and therefore is yours, is a market. Come on down to the market. Everybody loves a good market. I don't know why I'm using that voice. And a market is very simple. You have a fixed market of something, resources generally, and you can buy from that market or sell to that market, and the prices can vary. So the number 1 listed here is Brass Birmingham, but Power Grid also has this as well, and I think Power Grid was maybe my first introduction to this mechanism. It's not necessarily a card market, right? You want to have the ability to buy and sell. That's what distinguishes this from something else, from just a resource pool, right? Just getting resources. No, you're actually physically changing the amount depending on how you buy and sell. It's almost a variation of commodity speculation, but in a more elegant way, I think. If you're talking about an open market of cards, that's open drafting. That's where that would be categorized in. But yeah, Power Grid is so interesting because the market gets refilled every round, and the resources should presumably get cheaper unless people are buying more of that resource throughout the game, and then they're either going to stay the same or they're going to get more expensive because they only replenish in a certain amount. Brass also has this in the market where there's a coal and an iron market, where if you are adding coal to the board, sometimes it can go right into the coal market and fill it back up and make it cheaper for everybody else. Or you might have to spend a lot more later on as people have been using up all the coal in the world and our planet slowly dies and implodes upon itself. Either or. Just what great fun. But there's a wonderful ebb and flow that happens here with using a market. Other games that have this are Food Chain Magnate, Brass Lancashire, obviously, Clans of Caledonia, The Quacks of Quedlinburg, Paladins of the West Kingdom, Glenmore 2 Chronicles. Jaipur is listed as a market. I guess that's true because you have a set of cards and you can exchange cards with them. That's an interesting application of this term, and I think it's right because it's not open drafting. You're not only taking and taking. You can do that exchange. I think that's a key element to the market mechanic. But I think it's a testament, again, it's a testament to how much I enjoy this mechanic, that when I see a title that I've heard good things about, and now I see it flagged as having this in it, I go, oh yeah, maybe I really should grab Clans of Caledonia or Glenmore 2. So that's number 19, the market. Number 18 is a Traitor Game. Now, a Traitor Game is specific. You either begin the game with a hidden identity of being a traitor, or you're assigned it during a game. And the traitors win when they trigger a fail condition for the other players. I think it's pretty evident. I like table talk around a game. I like lying around games. I like pointing the finger at people who aren't me. That's what I enjoy in my games, is misdirection. This is also probably why I love Survivor as much as I do, because it has these elements of deception and deceiving the other players and having a poker face and playing off of each other's emotions and having to use the information that the game is providing you with to deduce whether or not that person is going to betray you or if they won't. If they've been acting sneakily in the game, or it just provides memorable moments, I find. And that's what I like having in my games, are these memorable moments. These things that you can talk about afterwards. That's a big part of gaming for me, but not the only part. I'm also very mathematically focused. I like a wide variety of things. But having the ability to have these memorable moments, I think throwing a traitor element in there usually works out well. Sometimes it doesn't work out well. Sometimes it kind of is to the detriment of the game if the game is too hard. You know, I think having a traitor mechanic is really hard to nail. I don't think Dead of Winter does this very well, and that's one of the first games with a traitor mechanic that I thought of, because you have to plan for that. The traitor will be hindering the game, right? So you can't make it too hard because you have to plan on the traitor hindering the game, but if the traitor doesn't do their job well enough, then it becomes too easy. Or if the game is naturally too hard, then the traitor actually doesn't have to do anything. And I think that's what happens in Dead of Winter, with specifically the traitor mechanic. But even with that, I still think it's a fun thing to be like, hey, are you the traitor? Is anybody here the traitor? No, nobody's the traitor. And I don't have that much fun being the traitor in Dead of Winter, because you can just tank a game for someone and everything they're trying to do, it can just suck. So it's one where I think I could really go back and forth, but it's up so high because when it hits, I feel like it hits pretty well. Games that have a traitor mechanic in it that are listed are Nemesis, Mansions of Madness, Battlestar Galactica, The Resistance, Dead of Winter, Secret Hitler. So it could be either the social deduction variety or the sort of co-op variety. It can apply for both. Number 17 is increasing the value of unchosen resources. The sexiest title out there. But this is a slick mechanism that's so subtle, but goes such a long way in terms of planning your turns and giving that push your luck back and forth between people. It's so simple. If you don't pick that thing, it gets better until somebody picks it. That's all it is. Puerto Rico was my first introduction into this, where the rolls that aren't picked, they get a coin on them. And if they're not picked again, they get another coin on them. Agricola has this as well, and I don't think I played this way the first time I played with Agricola, and it was just so hard. And then realizing how things could grow, and if everybody doesn't pick it, it kind of helps someone else down the line, and you want to be that someone else. Yeah, now there's 3 stone on there, but could I hold out? Do people need stone, or do people not need stone that I could hold out until there's 4 stone on there? And I think that's the question that makes it such an exciting mechanism for me. And it's such an integral mechanism to anything that's about resource management. Oftentimes it is related to picking various roles, which is interesting. Or maybe that's just because that's what's listed, or those games are higher up on Board Game Geek. You've got Twilight Imperium, Terra Mystica, and Puerto Rico that kind of all do that. Dune Imperium is listed just because the spice stacks on those 3 specific locations. Caverna the Cave Farmers is on there. Pax Pamir has that. See, that makes me want to check out Pax Pamir more, and I don't think I cared to until this moment in time. Agricola, Le Havre, Lords of Waterdeep. Oh, Lords of Waterdeep has that when, for the buildings, right? You're stacking the points on them for purchasing. Or some of the buildings kind of stack up and some are just a one-time thing. It's just such a wonderfully simple idea that I don't know where it came from, but it feels like it was Uwe Rosenberg because it's in every single one of his games, or pretty much. It's one of those things that just is so beautifully elegant and contributes so much to the flow of the game that I desperately love it. Just thinking about it gets me excited. Now on to number 16, and this is an interesting one because this is worker placement with dice workers. And so worker placement is categorized as its own mechanic on Board Game Geek, but also worker placement with dice workers and worker placement with variable workers, or workers with different abilities or whatever. These are all categorized on Board Game Geek as a style of worker placement, but worker placement with dice workers falls here at number 16, and it falls here because it could be great if it's in Lorenzo Il Magnifico, or it could be unbalanced just due to randomness. It depends how you implement this mechanic, right? And that's why I think I really enjoy Lorenzo Il Magnifico, because it takes this idea of randomizing the value of the worker and randomizing what that worker can specifically do, both of which I think is a really interesting idea, but it makes it even for everyone. So it's not like you can get screwed over by bad rolls. Everybody is resigned to those rolls. Everybody's workers are worth 1, 4, and 6 this round. And so you can only do a minimal amount with them. Whereas if I roll 3 6s and you roll 3 1s and the 6s are objectively better than the 1s, I haven't gotten the leg up on you because of skill, I've gotten the leg up on you because of luck, right? And so that's where that can falter for me. But I love variability in worker placement, and the variability of what you can do with these workers is so exciting to me. And I think that's what worker placement with dice workers provides. The Castles of Burgundy is listed as the number 1 highest ranked on Board Game Geek as an example of this. And it's true, you're rolling 2 dice, and you're essentially using these dice as workers to take things from various depots, right? The dice rolls are determining your accessibility of grabbing things. But I like in Castles of Burgundy, and you'll find this in a lot of worker placement with dice placement, that there is ways to change the number of your dice. So if you don't like it, you can prepare for those bad rolls, or you can rely on luck. And at least then there's a choice that you made. You chose not to prepare to mitigate your dice rolls, and that's why you can't do anything with your dice on your turn, versus just not being able to do something fun. So we've also got Teotihuacan, The Voyages of Marco Polo, Troyes, Lorenzo Il Magnifico, Roll for the Galaxy. It's interesting that Castles of Burgundy is listed as this, and I would list it as this as well, because it is the value on the dice that affects the play, and I think that's the salient point. You're not putting your dice out onto a spot when you use it, but you might as well be. So it's that spirit of using the dice there, and it's through taking away different tiles that you then limit the spots for future dice rolls, right? Anyway, that's worker placement with dice rolls. I think the variability that comes from rolling dice to determine where your workers can go is just exceptionally interesting, and that's why it's number 16. Now, number 15 is the closed economy auction. This is where you are going to have just a regular auction, but whatever is bid in that auction goes to people in the game. And so you can bid really high, but then if it goes to somebody else and you don't have anything, you're going to be screwed. So it really mitigates those high bids, and being aware of the flow of the game and the flow of the resources and the economy and how that impacts the game itself is huge. It's another reason why I like Rising Sun. You'll see I could probably tie almost any of these to Rising Sun because I do love Rising Sun so much. But that was another thing where in your bidding process, it's kind of a half closed economy auction because the winner gives the losers their money and the losers' money goes away. In a closed economy auction, that wouldn't necessarily happen. Everything would kind of flow free form together. So Raw is an example of this. No Thanks is an example of this as well. You're going to be putting out your chips and somebody will take those chips back. There's only a limited amount of chips. You start with that much money and that's it for the rest of the game. The Estates is another one listed here. Again, you have everybody starts with like $15,000 and that's it for the game. So when I played the Estates, I said, okay, great. I'm going to spend the first half of the game getting everyone's money and then the second half of the game doing whatever I want for very cheap and bleeding them dry. And that's exactly what I did. And hey, I had a great time and I won. The other players were sad that they didn't see that coming and couldn't do anything for the back half of the game. So it depends what you like with the games. I like the possibility being there. I like in Raw, you have these auction tiles and yeah, I can bid really high, but then somebody else is gonna get a chance to get my super high tile. And it's how do I use those and when do I pull the trigger on those that make a huge difference to the structure of the game. And we talked a little bit about in Castles of Mad King Ludwig, sort of in the I cut you choose idea that they would set up the board and then the other player would get to pick first. But there's also this closed economy auction. Well, just this closed economy. It's just a closed economy, which surprisingly isn't a mechanic or a mechanism. It's the auction specific that we're talking about. You could probably throw Castles of Mad King Ludwig in here even though it's not listed. I would argue it gives me a similar result or a similar feeling. So yeah, I just think it's a lot of fun. It forces you to not overbid. And you can't have a strategy of just get a whole bunch of stuff and then outbid everyone. Or you can, but it takes a lot of work to get to that spot. And it has to be like an integral part of your plan and people can easily stop that plan if they're paying attention. Number 14 is a mechanism from Catan. And it made me realize how cool board games can be. And that is the trading mechanic. It's a very simple thing. We can swap resources. On my turn, I can trade. You don't even have to be, you can be free-form trading. Like Chinatown, you're constantly trading things around. You can trade whatever you want, or you can trade very specific things as outlined by the game. But you trade it directly with each other and not with the game. That's it. It's very free-form, it's very open, but I love, again, the creativity that can come from this mechanic. Because it doesn't always have to be in a competitive sense either. It can be in a cooperative sense too. Pandemic Legacy is the #1 game listed on Board Game Geek because you can trade cards with each other. And so in a cooperative sense, you're figuring out, okay, I have this stuff, how do I get it to you for the exact time that you need it? Or in a competitive sense, it's, okay, I don't need this thing, you don't need that thing, let's make a deal. And in both cases, I think it promotes a lot of conversation around the table. And I like talking when I'm playing my games. I often am talking out my moves and strategies out loud if nobody talks, because I've got to talk to someone. And then, so I start revealing every secret I could possibly know throughout the course of the game. But that's pretty much it. Just anything that promotes negotiation or talking or communication and conversation around a table, I like. And so having a trading element, not just because we can swap stuff and you can mitigate bad rolls and you can mitigate things that aren't great or mitigate randomness through conversation. That's fun too, and that's fun that there's a way to mitigate that through other players, but just that there's a reason or an ability to swap stuff. Often in like RPGs, like Zombicide or Massive Darkness, you can trade items, and I've never really worried about that. In Dead of Winter, you can trade items as an action too. That, I feel, is more just the swapping and reorganizing of stuff. It's never felt like that significant, and it often feels bad to waste an action trading. But when trading is freeform, that's when I really like it. And yeah, that's why it's my number 14, or whatever it is. 14? Yeah, that's it. Now, number 13, I can't believe we're at 13. is the auction and bidding mechanic. And this is an interesting one because if you tuned in at number 150, we were talking about turn order and how Board Game Geek has 7 different ways of determining turn order. And so I didn't include those in the ranking. Well, the same for auction and bidding. There are 10 different listed styles of auction that Board Game Geek has. 9, sorry. There's auction compensation, which I also didn't include, but that's when you're compensated for losing a bid, right? Like you don't win the thing, but you get a little side prize, a little side piece action. But you have auction dexterity, Dutch priority, English, fixed placement, multiple lot, once around, sealed bid, turn order until pass. All of these are different ways of auctioning, and you might be familiar with some of them. Dexterity, for example, is like, hey, you flick a disc or something and that determines who goes first, right? That's fairly self-explanatory. Dutch is when it starts high, and if anybody wants it, nope. Does anybody want it? Nope. Does anybody want it? Nope. Does anybody want it? Yes. Okay, you get it. That's Dutch. Dutch priorities, everybody's adding tokens to something, and if they remove their thing, it gets cheaper for everybody else. The Small World is kind of a variation of that, and Spirium too, it's kind of listed. English is going up. Right, you get the gist. Once around, as you go once around, the person who ends gets an advantage. There are so many ways of auctioning and bidding, but the outcome for me is usually the same, and that outcome is fun. They all feel fairly similar to me because it's all about reading your opponent and figuring out what they want and how much they're willing to pay, and it becomes this back and forth mind game of what do people want to play? Do I drive the bid up? Or I could get stuck with that and then not have something that I actually want. And that push and pull is always going to be interesting to me. This is also one of Power Grid's central mechanisms in that you are bidding for a power plant, you put one up for auction, you say, hey, listen, is anybody interested in buying this? I'll start the bidding at $4. And if nobody buys it, you get it, but then you can't bid on any of the other auctions for that round. And so you might have just been trying to get somebody to take it so that better, more lucrative things would come up for you, and then it doesn't happen, or it does happen. And in both ways, both outcomes, I feel are fun for me in a game. If I don't get it, I go, shoot, I wanted you to buy this. I didn't want this at all. And then I have to figure out how to use it. Or if I get somebody to take it, I say, yeah, I thought I could get you to take this because I want this. Both elements, both outcomes, whether positive or negative for me, as like the impact of the game, give me a positive feeling while playing the game. So I just love auctioning and bidding. It's also why I'm excited to try QE, which is just that. I know I have that waiting for me at home from All Play, the artist formerly known as BoardGameTables.com. I just think bidding can be so tense and so important depending on the value of the resources. And also if the resources don't have value, can easily get away from you. So yeah, games that have auctioning and bidding, there's a lot of them, but surprisingly not a lot in the top 100. Well, there's at least 6. Through the Ages, Power Grid, Through the Ages, 5 Tribes, El Grande, Keyflower. Yeah, then it goes to Age of Steam, Game of Thrones, Raw, Coimbra, Dune, Cyclades, the list goes on. Princes of Florence, that's a great auctioning and bidding one because you are putting forward a type of thing, an advantage, a thing that can go on your board. And if you win it, nobody else can take that specific type of thing for the round. But there's going to be more than one round. So when do you pull the trigger on that thing? When do you need it to complete contracts? That's a great game. Moving along to number 12. This is one that I would have expected should be in my top 10 based around how much I talk about it, but it only got to 12, so that means that I'm a fool, I'm a liar, and you should never trust whatever I say, and that's also why betting and bluffing is at number 12. And here's the thing, I've never enjoyed playing poker. I haven't. I get too stressed. But betting and bluffing is poker. You have something, and you have some hidden information, and players can see their position because of it, and you can bluff your way out of things, or they can call your bluff and bet more and think you don't have the actual thing. Western Legends has this and is listed here because you literally play poker in that, because it's an open sandbox world set in a Western theme, and obviously you're going to be able to play poker at the saloon. What's really interesting is no game listed in the top 100 has betting and bluffing listed as a mechanic. It's only me who likes this, but Rising Sun is the #1 game on Board Game Geek right now that has betting and bluffing as a mechanic, which should tell you something. It also says Magic the Gathering has it, so it must be card related. But let me know how that works, because I don't quite know. Camel up, down force. You're betting on the outcome of these races, right? I think maybe I would like playing poker more now, because I like the bluffing aspect of it. I think I'm just always scared when real money is on the line. I don't know if you know this by now, but I'm cheap. Anyway, betting and bluffing. So betting and bluffing, I guess, scratches that itch where I want that thrill without having to shell out the money when I lose. I can make the stakes pretty high in a board game, but then I don't have to have any real world ramifications after that. And finally, number 11, finishing us off for this video, and that is deduction. Deduction is simple. You have a bunch of clues and you have something that's hidden and you're trying to figure out the hidden information based around the clues. Search for Planet X, Alchemist, Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, Cryptid. It even has Love Letter here, and that's true. You're deducing where the princess is, and you're deducing what cards are left in people's hands. Maybe that's why I like Love Letter. Because it does have that small element of deduction, and maybe that's why I've stopped liking Love Letter, because that deduction, I figured out the puzzle. I think that's the danger with deduction games, is that if you figure out the puzzle and the way of thinking, because it requires a way of thinking to shift your mind to figure out what these clues are, it can potentially spoil the game for you if it's too simple. I still like Love Letter, but I also feel like I've seen everything Love Letter has to offer at this point. If you haven't seen what Love Letter has to offer, go pick it up. It's a fun game, and it's cheap enough that it's fine when it runs its course. And this is probably why I like social deduction, specifically out of deduction, because I think the people create that variability. But I've always liked little logic puzzles. I've liked those logic grid puzzles. I've always liked trying to figure out the clues and racing to beat someone. And again, it creates that nice moment of talking about it afterwards. Hey, what was your clue? How did you figure this out? You feel like Sherlock Holmes, right? Sherlock Holmes is the master of deduction. Sometimes my deduction gets me into trouble when I see a glimpse of something from a show or something being pushed off to the side, and I recognize why someone put it there and what that implies on the state of their life. It's those sorts of skills that you can then apply into a board game, and it feels really cool. You feel really smart. I think I feel the smartest playing a game when I'm playing a deduction game. That's what we want. We want to feel good about ourselves, or at least I do. I constantly do. I'm desperate for it. And deduction helps me do that. So that's why it's at number 11. It's just fun figuring out the puzzle, and it's equally fun for me, the process of getting there, as is the result. If you haven't played Cryptid, oof, it's so good. Check that out. Anyway, that's it for this bit of the list. The next one will be upcoming, I don't know when, maybe next week, probably next week, once these are gone, even though somebody did say, very, very funnily, that most mechanics they know have mutton chops. Why shouldn't the top 10 board game mechanics be sporting them? Anyway, as always, drop a comment below for the algorithm, because this series doesn't do well at all. But I like doing it, so that's why I'm doing it. And again, it's kind of, thanks to the support of my Patreon community, allows me to do these sorts of things that don't help the channel grow whatsoever, and in fact, sometimes make me lose subscribers. But I appreciate you all being here and sticking around, and drop any comments you want below, but hit the like button, all that sort of stuff. My name's Chris George. I don't have a catchphrase, and I think my brain must be addled because, well, more addled than it normally is, because I almost forgot to tell you all this, and that would have been a catastrophe. It really would have been. I'm a bit shaken right now. I don't know what I would have done. So, crisis averted. Even though I still don't have a catchphrase, I would really love one, but I'll get there eventually.